The Second Son by VanHoose. Chapter 1. The tavern was dirty and sordid, even by the lowest of standards. The customers who frequented the Second Son were as scurvy and lice-ridden as the establishment itself. The thieves and butchers swarmed the pit for hours, sometimes days, without seeing a new face. If an unfortunate traveler happened to wander in from the road or stagger in drunkenly from the muddy streets out back, they could usually expect a belly full of steel and an open throat for their misfortune. If any unlucky woman or young boy were found, every man able to use his piece would have a turn before they were finally given the ultimate escape from a slow and torturous demise. The brothel within contained 3 whores. Pox-ridden and as vulgar as the men, these women would cheer in others' misery and help themselves to the plunders of the less fortunate. The oldest of the 3, Wayo, had a soul of pure hate. Her teeth were black nubs, ground down by time or completely gone. Knocked out by some drunken fists, her thin, stringy gray hair flew around in no fashion. Her voice was as harsh as the screech of a siren and as pitiful as the silence of a crow. Her words were the word of law. Neither man nor beast lived or died without her approval. They almost never lived. The ones that did sometimes ended their pain themselves. On the day that she'd arrived at the tavern, Laxus Diamond had seen 19 years. The daughter of a loving home, she was brought up and cared for by the best teachers. Her mother had died young and was unable to show her the womanly arts. Laxus had no interest in the needlepoint or singing or wearing fancy dresses. She was fascinated by the blade. She loved the dance of the swords, the clash of the hammer on armor, the arc of a morning star into the helmet of an opponent. Her father had tried to dissuade her from combat, but eventually gave in to the near-constant badgering from her. While other girls were gossiping about young men or which scarves were in fashion, she learned the lethal points of a body. While the young women her age were attending dances, she was watching a bear baiting and the slaughter of the arenas. Other girls wanted fancy slippers and frilly hats. She wanted leather jerkins and heavy walking boots. She could shoot a bow and arrow as far and as accurately as any archer and swing a sword better than any man she knew. She was different in other ways, darker ways. She'd known from an early age that she could control the shining of the second sun. Her powers manifested in ways that were mysterious, even to her. Freezing water with only a stare, making flower pots levitate, imitating the sounds of animals so well that she could talk to them, and them to her. All these things had happened at one time or another. She could control things with her mind. She could manipulate with thought. Her parents either did not know of her abilities or were too afraid to acknowledge them. She developed the skills of her mind on her own. She tried to hide her womanly body under the disheveled garb of a poor baker's outfit. Her skin, milky white, remained yet unblemished by time, disease, or childbearing. The deep, rich blue of her eyes had the color of spring skies just after a thunderstorm, and her hair was the red of maple leaves in the fall. Her hips round and full, the shape men desired more than anything else. She carried her innocence like a badge of honor. Few women had made it as far as she had without suffering at the hands of a man. Most women learned early that men took what they wanted, money, food, or women. It was all the same. The thing men cherished more than life was a thing that they could never have, so they stole it from women as often as they could. She learned that she could either run and hide, stand and fight, or submit and give in. She vowed that no man would have her.
"Look at this fresh piece coming down the road. She looks like she's got gold in her honeypot."
A small drunken thief staring through the window served as a lookout for the wretched band. The tavern became silent as several of the customers crowded towards the shuttered and mildewed window covers to steal a glance at the newcomer. She had stood 100 yards from the tavern door when they spotted her. Ankle deep in the slimy mud pit that passed as a road, she was looking at the dilapidated building as if to decide whether to continue.
"If she comes in here, she's mine first."
Carid, the largest and drunkest of the tavern's current customers, loudly pronounced. No one challenged him. He knew that he was the strongest in the tavern and he could do as he wished.
"Before you take your pleasure, let's have some fun with her. She looks like she might put up a scrap."
An old woman lying on the tavern spoke out. She rarely felt the need to voice openly about anything, not because she feared Carid, but that she felt that he was beneath her. He was a stupid man whose sole leadership quality came from the strength in his arm. She had a cure for that. The woman nearing the tavern felt different. It brought forth from her an itch that she hadn't felt for a long time. She wanted some blood.
"I think this little cunt might be more than she looks. She's carrying some goods I ne'er seen. The leather she's wearing might be used, but
They're sturdy yet. Who knows what's underneath, huh?
Oi! What's it to you, Io? You're no damn good for nothing except horning, running your lips, and passing little spells to scare the orphan kids begging for scraps. Keep that wicked mouth shut, and I might let you lick this bitch's ass before I get mine.
No one laughed. Carrot sneered as he told the old woman his mind. Even so, he had overspoke his station. He didn't outshine her evil ways. The rest of the tavern gasped, while the wicked, as she was known, would surely have her way with him, for she was the evilest and most vile witch in generations. Her mouth narrowed, gray stringy hair stirred in a breeze that didn't blow. The hate raging from her eyes cast a shadow that overcame the almost total darkness of the grim and frightened room. Suddenly, Wyo transformed into a being that no one in the tavern had ever seen. In her anger at Carrot, she became the thing most feared in the dreams of children, of widows, of scholars. The witch had not physically changed in her appearance, but the transformation was none the less evident. Even the air around her body became more sinister. The tavern was silent. No movement. The people were frozen in fear. Nothing breathed. The fleas stopped biting. From beneath her tattered dress, a withered and wrinkled hand shot forth with an unimaginable quickness. The slice that came with it cut with a painless ease. The blade was ethereal in smoke. It vanished before it was seen. The path it bore in Carrot's face was wide and deep. The thick, rich blood that flowed brightly from his gashed cheek bore proof that he was no match for her unholy knowledge. His steel and brawn would falter and fail. It was a warning. Obey or die. "Do not test me again, Carrot." Her voice came calm and relaxed. No hint of fright, excitement, desire, or boastfulness. It was a simple thing to understand. She was not going to be angered by him again. Not if he wanted to continue living. His scream of pain and fear was cut short by her once again. With a flick of a hand, the sounds coming from him were silenced. No sounds escaped the room, lest they scare the traveler away. "Sit and mend your wounds, or a scarred face will be the least of your worries on this day. The rest of you, take the back and get out. The forest will welcome you. I will not. Leave us, and you will live. Do not, and you will die." The few patrons and thieves among them left and did not look back. As Lexi drew nigh to the inn, she felt the mood of the road change. The muddy path was cold and apathetic, but the closer she came to the worn-down shanty, the more she felt the foreboding of it. The evil she sought was here. She knew that it was the right place. This was where she needed to be. Opening the door, her eyes slowly adjusted to the darkened room. The dimly lit tavern was smoky with the remains of old fires, the steam of boiling pots and the stench of rotting life. A rat scurried across the threshold of the door, departing the vileness of it all. She entered and scanned what she saw. Uneven tables, broken chairs, melted candles lay strewn about like forgotten relics of a destroyed temple. Only the two inhabitants, a large man with a fresh wound on his face and a battered old woman with dark teeth. With a nod, she slowly entered the room, never taking her eyes off the old woman. The man eyeing her with too much expectancy, like someone who was about to receive a treat, and the woman whose cold stare cut through the space between them like an icy blast of northern wind, looked on with the knowing anticipation of a battle yet to come. The man, the size of a small bear, bellowed.
"Looks like we have a pixie in the house. To what do we owe the pleasure of your company, miss?"
His sardonic tone and the bulge in his breeches left no doubt about his intentions. He rose to meet her across the room. He held up a single hand. Its meaning was clear. To his surprise, Carrot stopped like he'd hit a wall. He found himself unable to move. In his mind, he'd wandered upon a treacherous crevasse. Space so daunting and wide, he felt that he was looking at the end of the world. He could see himself trying to scream and slander that little traveler from across the wide open space, but no sound came forth. He had been silenced. His mouth moved. The muscles in his jaw clenched and the air passed through his throat, but still no sound. Even the old Wyo could see this in his mind and was surprised by it. She hadn't expected this from the young traveler. "Sir, I don't know you." Her speech was soft and calm as the spring day. Her eyes, focused on Wyo, never wavered. "Please don't approach me. I have no wish to engage with you. I can see your thoughts as well as you think them. Do not die for them. Please, leave me to my business. The back door will do. If you wish to speak, do so. But be quick." Lowering her hand, he felt the path in his mind behind them clear. His mind, confused by the last few moments, suddenly became filled with rage. Nothing else mattered but the girl. This young, slight, beautiful girl had stopped him with words. Her words would be her last. Wyo only looked on at the pair, feeling a humiliation more complete than he'd ever felt before. All thoughts left and became one. Destroy this girl who'd made such a man feel shame.
Whore! You're going to suffer before you die!
Moving with a surprising quickness that was always the realm of younger, cleaner men, he was across the room almost before Laxus could unsheath her twin daggers. The works of daggers are remarkable things. Short, swift, deadly. 20 separate wounds were opened before he felt the first one. The attacks were fast, so fast the first one scarcely had time to spill blood before the last one had been made. Sidestepping his charge, Laxus was still fixed on the eyes of Wyo, who'd watched the exchange, barely a sign of concern. Her eyes, one old and dead, the other the most amazing shade of hazel ever seen, had never taken their stare from the girl. Laying on the ground, dying, he looked at the girl standing over him. Her face, a mixture of pity and dejection, only whispered, "Into the next life you go. Try not to waste it as you have this one. Death, the friend, will find you quickly." He did not live to hear the last of it. His blood and life spilled onto the dirt floor.
That was the most impressive display, young one. Most impressive.
Wyo chanted before her. Somehow, in a few seconds that it took to kill the overgrown oaf, she'd changed. She went from a soft, fair-skinned maiden with flaming hair to a deadly stalker come to find her, her eyes never leaving the cold blue ones of her new opponent. For that's what she surely was now, an opponent, an adversary, an enemy. She knew this girl had come to the tavern to kill her. She'd known it since she saw her. This was no ordinary warrior. She had the knowledge of the second son in her. Just how much and where she'd learned it was a mystery. But after she disposed of her, she'd find out.
Your name, young one?
Laxus Diamond.
Laxus Diamond? From where do you hail?
She was not really interested in her past life. She was trying to find weakness in her story. To know one's past was to know one's future. Does it matter, old one? Her voice was just as soft and still as it had been before. Only now when she spoke with the certainty of thought and deed. She was here for Wyo. She knew what Wyo wanted from her. She could not get it. Knowing a name has some authority on its own, but knowing a name and place is much more powerful.
No, I suppose it doesn't. Your business here today is with me, isn't it? Who sent you?
Her malevolent eyes never leaving. Her impassive face as blank as an ashen sunless sky. Ignoring the question as a ruse, Laxus continued with her speech, her intent clear, her resolve absolute. Stepping over the dead body, still bleeding on the floor, she approached the old witch with grim steadfastness and strength of character. Wyo, you alone will decide how this day will go. There are no other alternatives for either of us. Either we both live and walk from this place, with you as my prisoner, or one of us is dead. I will not die today. Death, the friend, will not find me. Don't despair, Wyo. He will not find you today, lest you decide to search for him yourself.
Then let's be on the search,
Wyo whispered beneath her breath as she sprung forward with her old hands bellying the speed at which they came. Her mouth was speaking a tongue which was ancient and lost. Her spell was as deadly and practiced as any spell cast before her. Laxus was ready. With the wave of her hand, her attack was thwarted by a fury of light so bright and blinding that the crone lost her way and came crashing into an overturned table. Wyo's mind screamed in agony and confusion. She'd never known so much fright and pain in her life. From within her mind, she searched for an escape. She was in a dark, windowless room with no door. Her legs would not move and her hands were frozen at her sides. Her voice was stuck in her throat, yet her mind was alive. She had no control over her body. All she could do was concentrate on the voice that she could hear. It was the only thing that she could perceive. Her body remained motionless and silent on the floor. From within a small sack tied to her waist, Laxus reached for a small round stone and placed it on Wyo's forehead. Wyo, you can hear me. I know your mind is still alive. You must concentrate on the sound of my voice. You may blink your eyes to show that you understand me. Once for yes, twice for no. Blink to show me you understand. Wyo felt herself blink. Only once, but she felt it. Good. Listen to me carefully. With no hesitation or malice afterthought, she gave a very practiced and prepared speech that she'd given many times before. This was nothing new to her. The tavern had fallen dark except for the space that Laxus and Wyo occupied. Indeed, the inn had almost faded into the background of nothingness. The walls and chairs, the rats, all had seemed to disappear from around them. Laxus paid no heed. That was her doing. Her power was at full force, here and now. If anyone had been inside of the tavern, the sight would have driven them mad. Wyo, also known as Wyo the Witch, Wyo the Wicked, Wyo the Stealer of Children, Wyo the Night Whisperer. I give you a choice, here and now. Submit to my authority and place yourself under my command or die. You will have no other chance. Do this now, and I will transport you to a place of your trial and execution. You will have no more chances. Don't do this, and I will end your life. You will have 5 seconds to answer. Blink once for submission, twice for execution. What say you? The stone, cold and heavy on her head, was a powerful rune that she'd never felt before. It lived with a magic so ancient and unknown that she was scared for the first time in her life. Wyo knew that she had no other choice. This powerful being possessed skills that she'd only heard about in the darkest corners of the darkest places she'd ever been to. She could feel the stone weighing down on her like 1,000 leviathans. She knew the stone was beyond her capabilities to control, as well as the young girl wielding it. She had been caught off guard and surprised. How this young one had such power at such a youthful age was beyond her understanding. 5. She felt the stone begin to hum and vibrate from within. She could feel the power building up to some unknown crescendo. The only thought that she could muster was the self-preservation. How could she live without submitting? 4. She searched for possibilities. Could she escape? Could she run? Could she hide? Could she even move? 3. No. She couldn't. 2. There was no choice. Either blink once and live for a while, or blink twice and die today. Here and now. The stone was growing hotter and more violent in its vibrations, even though on the outside it hadn't moved at all. The inner energy the stone possessed was driving itself through the old woman's core. The girl was reaching for one of her daggers. 1. She blinked. But only once.